I have this goal of visiting all 50 state capitals, and in order to do that, I'm going to have to do a lot of road trips and a lot of driving. And so me and my friend Matt, we have this plan to drive like 9 total days all the way to South Dakota and back. But in order to do that, we need to practice first. So this year, we went on a 4-day road trip where we went from North Carolina to Virginia to Maryland to Delaware and then back to North Carolina. On these road trips, we follow a couple rules. One, we gotta visit the state capitol building and we gotta film a video there, and ideally the state capitol building is open, which means we have to go during the week, which is fine because we're on summer break from college, so it's not like we have real jobs. And then we need to, two, find a cheap place to stay because we can't just buy a bunch of hotels, and also we're not able to even do that because I'm 20 and Matt's 19. And 3, everything we need needs to be packed in the car, which is a whole another deal. So for this video, we took everything we need, we put it in the car, we found 3 campsites, one outside of Raleigh, North Carolina, one outside of Washington, D.C., and then one just south of Dover. We camped there and then we traveled between all of these spots. So in this video, I want to do a recap looking back at the trip and actually explaining kind of how it went, what we had to do, what we did for food and everything like that. So the first day was pretty light. We woke up in the morning and we went all the way to Raleigh. It was a 3-hour drive. It wasn't that bad. Okay, I'm leaving my house now and the car is at 61,716 miles. So let's see how much we get by the end of this. Once we got to Raleigh, we basically parked, we went to the Capitol building, we filmed the video there, we went inside the Capitol. The Capitol on the inside is just kind of boring. We went to the South Carolina State Capitol right after we got back from a college break, and that was the first one that I have been to in a while. And then that was the first one we filmed the video at too. On this trip, the North Carolina Capitol was first, and I could tell when we went to it that it was going to be disappointing because the inside is really kind of small. The outside is okay, but it's not like grand or anything. You can barely see it when you're in the city of Raleigh too. The outside of the Capitol isn't as bad, it's covered in trees and everything like that, and Raleigh's a great city, but the Capitol placement in the city is just kind of lacking. After the Capitol, we basically walked around. We went to the governor's mansion, so that was really cool. We didn't go inside because I didn't think about it ahead of time. I didn't do any of the planning. Obviously, you have to register way in advance to get access into the building, but we saw the outside, which was really nice. So we're at the executive mansion. Apparently tours are booked like 2 weeks in advance, but I didn't really want to do a tour anyway because it's just an old building that just the governor lives in. But yeah, we did the Capitol down there, so that's nice. And here we are at the executive mansion, so it looks cool. After that, we went to the North Carolina State Museum of Science. We wanted to go to the History Museum, but the History Museum just wasn't open, and it's fine. The Science Museum was really nice. A lot of these museums are very similar in all the states, especially history. But the North Carolina Science Museum is very unique because North Carolina has 3 unique areas. Obviously, you have the coastal plains and the beaches and the Outer Banks. You have the Piedmont, the foothills of the mountains, and all of the industry there. And then you have the Appalachian Mountains, which is like a whole separate area, completely different from the other 2 parts. So it's really cool to see all 3 interacting in that museum. After our museum, we went to our campsite. The biggest issue for me was I was worried that we would have to get to the campsite by a certain time, when in reality, it's very much like a hotel where it says check-in time is at, like, for example, 3 p.m. After 3 p.m., we could go there. So a lot of these campsites are just like, just show up after 3 p.m. and as long as you're supposed to be here, you're good. Okay, we made it to the campsite. First night campsite. We're in, Wake Forest, North Carolina? So we got to the campsite, no issue. Before that, we went to a gas station and a grocery store. We got gas in the car. We got food. Matt brought his cooler from his fraternity, so we were putting our ice waters in there because, again, we have tap water at the campsite, but most of the water that we're really relying on and keeping cool is water bottles that we got and we're keeping in the cooler. We have to replace the ice about twice a day. We do it usually just in the morning and then around like 5 p.m. before we go to the campsite at the end of the day. Tonight for dinner, we decided to do quesadillas. Now, we couldn't get the big quesadillas because we only have 2 people and we're not trying to just save tortillas or waste tortillas, so we bought tiny ones, but then we just stacked 2 on top of each other. I've made campsite quesadillas pretty much all of the time. This was nothing difficult, and they turned out pretty well, if I don't say so myself. This is how to make a campsite quesadilla. So first thing you want to do is you want to heat up your chicken beforehand. Then you prep your quesadillas, and then you put them together and you put it on your burner stove here, and you basically just cook them until the inside is nice and, you know, yummy and melted. And what I do is I put butter, but then I also put like garlic, and I go to the store and on my camp out, I bring this and I put it in the pot so the outside of the tortilla is nice and yummy. So that's pretty much it for day 1. The only other thing is that it rained that night and I did not bring my hammock tarp. I brought a really crappy tarp that I've been using in Scouts for a while, but besides that, I had nothing else. I had barely any rope. I didn't bring any long paracord, which was not good. I barely tied the tarp to my hammock, so I basically had 2 trees on either side, the hammock in between, and then the tarp was just lining on top of it. I tied the tarp strings to the hammock straps. That's how desperate I was. Ultimately though, it worked fine. I definitely got a little wet because the tarp was uneven, so like this part above my head in the hammock got wet, but besides that, it wasn't that bad. And the good news is we're camping in the middle of summer, so being in the hot rain, it's fine. And also the coolness of it was very refreshing, you know, compared to being outside in the heat, walking around, very humid. The late night rain is super, super cool. The morning of day 2, I actually woke up with my alarm, and I was like genuinely shocked how ready I was to just get up at 6 a.m. because coming home from college, I've barely woken up at 7:15 every morning. So waking up at 6 a.m. was a completely different change of pace. And not only that, waking up at 6 a.m. to go drive to another state to make another video was just completely different. So for this day, we drove all the way to Virginia and then to DC. So first, we drove to Richmond, Virginia. We got there just after 9 a.m. when the Capitol building was open, so we made great time. We went there, we found some parking on the road, we went into the Capitol building. Now, the interior of this building was remodeled in the early 2000s, so it's super new and it's super clean, and it really reminds me of the U.S. Capitol, to where there's an underground walk-in to the interior, just like the U.S. Capitol. And then from that underground area, we got access to go up to the big interior up inside the Capitol building. That's pretty much all we did in Richmond. I took some clips around the city, but besides that, we didn't really stay that long because we knew what was next. Obviously, you know, when presented with the option of staying in Richmond versus going to Washington, D.C. for the day, we decided to leave Richmond as fast as we possibly could. So getting to Washington, D.C. wasn't actually that hard. We had to take a different route around Washington because we didn't want to drive through D.C. Plus, our campsite was just north in Greenbelt, Maryland. So we decided to park up near the campsite. We parked at the University of Maryland, where the Maryland Terrapins play. I never knew what that mascot was until this trip when Matt told me. That university is very like obscure in terms of sports and everything like that, so I had no idea it existed. Which is funny because both of my parents actually went to college in Maryland. My dad went to the Naval Academy in Annapolis, and my mom went to Johns Hopkins University just outside of Baltimore. So that presents an interesting case where it's like, I know two very famous schools in Maryland, and neither are actually the University of Maryland. Anyway, we parked there because there's a metro station there. We took the metro station down to DC, and the DC Metro is amazing. It's way better than any system that we have here in Charlotte. And that kind of makes me sad because I want something that's that efficient. We took it down to the Archive Station, which is just outside of the National Mall. We walked around, we went to the John Wilson Administrative Building because that is the government building of the city of Washington, D.C. So here's the story. When I first started to think about making these videos about the capitals, I thought about also including the U.S. like territories and commonwealths and everything like that. So Guam, Puerto Rico, Northern Mariana Islands. But then I thought about DC, and DC, obviously, they're run by U.S. Congress, which the Capitol building in DC is the U.S. Capitol building. It's a very obvious answer. But the actual city of DC, which is all that DC is, they have to have some sort of town hall. And I looked it up, and it was actually its own, like, big famous building, and it's called the John Wilson Building. And then it turns out they actually like take visitors like every other capital does. So we went there. It was just like every other building where you have security and everything like that. We walked in. The only difference is it was just a normal office building to where a bunch of people that were working there were all just like city officials. We were probably like some of the only tourists that would ever go there. So I made the video on that, and that'll come out like way later, and a lot of these videos will come out way later because I gotta schedule things out for college, right? But it's like a lot of that stuff I've never seen online, so it's very fascinating to do. It's really not that important of a building. It's just like touring your local city hall, but it's a really big building, and it's also really close to the White House, which is also cool. So after that, we walked up to the north side of the White House where all the famous, photos are taken through the fence. We went down to the National Mall. We visited the Washington Monument. We didn't go inside because what are you gonna do there? It's really not that cool. We went to the African American History Museum. The museum is honestly one of my favorites. I know it opened recently, but it's a very fascinating exhibit, especially on the lower levels where it takes you through the foundations of slavery all the way through the modern day. It has so much to talk about there, and it's just amazing. Like, if you want to look at history, and not just history, but history that really impacts us as a society, go to that museum. After that, we went to the National Archives, or we had to steal the Declaration of Independence, of course, because of the treasure map.
I'm gonna steal the Declaration of Independence.
This was like the 5th time I've been to the National Archives. It's really not that interesting. I mean, obviously, you see the Declaration of Independence and you see the Constitution, and it's very fascinating. But, like, besides that, it's just that and a bunch of other old documents. Like, it's cool and it's free, so I don't mind it, but it's just like, whatever. Then we went to the Pentagon City Mall. So the story here is on my 8th grade field trip, we went to this mall, and we were all in the mall on the 1st floor, and my friends were on the 2nd floor in the Lego store, and I wanted to go to the Lego store, because if you don't know, I really like Legos. And we were about to, but then the chaperones told us we can only do the 1st floor. So now that I was like, oh, I'm gonna go to DC, and I have complete free will to go wherever I want, because it's just me and Matt and no other people with us, I went, let's go to the Pentagon City Mall so I can go to the Lego store, because I haven't gone there, and it's been an unresolved wish of mine to go to that Lego store. So we did. I, of course, bought some pieces, because if you don't know, I have a Lego City, so whenever I'm in a Lego store, I always just try to buy some pieces, because it's so cheap to just completely cram all of the pieces into one of those boxes, because you get such a good deal when you do it at the store. But besides that, we had Panda Express, or PF Chang's, I can't really remember which one it was, for dinner, and then we went back to the campsite. Now, this campsite, we got there just before the sun set. We had a bathroom right next to our campsite, but it was closed. Plus, it was like the most open campsite I've ever been in. Okay, so we are in Greenbelt, Maryland, at one of the most urbanized campsites we have ever been in. So basically, I am getting attacked by flies here. We have this bench here, we got my car. This is our site. Sorry, one sec, he's asking me to unlock the car. We're gonna hammock right there, bathrooms are there, and this is also cool too. I mean, obviously, I reserved the site, so it's going to say my name, but it has our name just right there, so that's really cool. So yeah, Nice campsite. It is, again, Greenbelt, Maryland. If you're ever near here, it's literally 30 minutes from DC. This is an amazing place to stay. That's the end of day 2. It was probably the most fun I've had in a while. Looking back, I wouldn't just definitively say day 2 was the most fun day of the trip, but it definitely was up there. Day 3. Day 3. I can't do it. It's just so funny. Day 3. Just ignore that. I'm trying to make this dramatic, but it's really not. Anyway, day 3, we woke up in Greenbelt, Maryland. Super peaceful. I remember waking up at 6 a.m. on the dot before my alarm even went off. And I was like, dude, amazing. And the first drive we had to Annapolis was only like 50 minutes. So it was a super chill morning. We left around like 7:30. We got to Annapolis. The Capitol building, I think, opened at 8:30. So that's why we left then. We basically parked, went to the Capitol building, went inside. This Capitol building, looking on Google Earth, is very weird. It's basically the inside of a roundabout, so it has a circular shape. But when you're actually there in the city, you can't really see that much, so it didn't feel as weird as it looked online. It honestly just felt like a normal building, but just in the heart of downtown Annapolis. And we basically just went there, went inside, and then we walked around the city. We tried to find a good place to eat crab. The only issue is pretty much everything opened for lunch at like 11:30, and I wanted to leave relatively soon because this was like 10:30. I didn't want to wait an hour just to get food. So we found a place that was already open. I got a crab cake with vegetables and I think fries too. The crab cake was amazing. Again, you know, when I'm in Annapolis, you have to have crab. It's basically just the staple food. And that's pretty much all we did in Annapolis. I drove around to the best of my memory because we've been there a lot with my dad and he's taken us inside the Naval Academy. We didn't go onto the campus of the Naval Academy just because we didn't really have enough time. And then we were out of there. And we drove over the bridge. We saw the Naval Academy on the bridge, so that was very cool. U.S. Naval Academy right there. Awesome. And then we were headed over to Delaware. So this was very interesting because we got to take the big bridge over the Chesapeake Bay. It's actually the first of 2 Chesapeake Bay bridges that we're taking on this trip. And if we didn't do that, it would have been like a 3-hour journey all the way up around Baltimore. So we just decided to pay like the $2 toll and drive all the way into Delaware. So we got, you know, across the bridge and it got very rural very quick. And the middle of Delaware, it's just farms. There's absolutely nothing going on there. And then we got into Dover, and Dover is very interesting, but besides that, it's just farms. The vibe of Dover is like a very small town, so it's like, you know, you have shops and everything, and that was very interesting. But the actual Capitol building is like the only touristy thing to do there. So we went to the Capitol, we did the video. There was some like ROTC training thing where all the people were in like military suits. So that was cool to see that. And then on top of that, this was the only building where we actually saw legislatures there in session. So you may see in these clips that I'm putting of the interior of the Capitol building, it's freaking packed. We went there and the security guards told us, hey, you can't go into the chambers on the bottom, but you can go in on the top, but don't record anything because there's private meetings happening. What I guess is that the Delaware legislature was in session because both the Senate and the House chambers had people in there talking to each other, trying to get deals done. And me and Matt were walking around and pretty much we saw a crap ton of just ambitious politicians just walking around. Everyone had like suits on and little Delaware pins on. It was very interesting to see. This is also the other fascinating thing is that this Capitol's parking is just right outside. There's no like underground tunnel to parking or anything. It's literally just right outside. And it has the names of every representative and their spots, so that's amazing. And I remember telling Matt, I was like, this is the most Delaware license plates I've ever seen in my life. And besides that, Matt was like very keen to point out that pretty much all these cars that these congressmen are driving are just like normal cars. And I remember I told Matt that this is the Delaware Congress, so it's not like super uber professional like, you know, California or New York or obviously the US Congress. These people are a lot just like normal people. We left Dover around like, I don't know, 3 or 4 to go to our campsite because we wanted to just have time to chill at the campsite and not just go. So we bought some frozen chicken, frozen rice, and we still had the frozen cookie dough that we bought on day 1 that we still haven't cooked. And then we went to our campsite. It was like 30 minutes south. It was the most rural drive of this entire trip. And we basically just chilled out for a couple hours. So as for cooking for tonight, we decided to do the cookies first. Now I put that in air quotes because they didn't really go well. You can't really cook cookies on a pan on a camp stove. And we tried, and it didn't work well. Obviously, we ate some of the cookie dough. I mean, you shouldn't, but whatever. But the actual cookies just didn't really cook. They were just mush. And I feel like if we cooked it like really thin on the pan, we could have done it. But whatever. I mean, it wasn't really that worth it. It was a nice experiment to try. Obviously, in hindsight, it makes sense that it had no chance of working whatsoever. And then in terms of our actual dinner, we heated up the frozen chicken on the pan. It took a while to actually like get heated, which again makes sense. And then we heated up the frozen rice on the pan. We had some edamame on the side, so that was amazing. We basically just popped it out of its shell and threw it into the stir fry too. And then we had the sauce from the frozen chicken. We put it all over the top at the end, and we ended up with this amazing stir fry. It was actually like really good. I obviously can make way better at home, but for a campsite meal, it was a pretty good meal. Here's how to make really easy stir fry at camp. So what you're gonna need is a box of frozen chicken and a box of frozen fried rice. And then basically you cook the frozen chicken first, you let it sit on low so the chicken cooks through. Then you put the fried rice on. And then a lot of these chickens come with sauce. If not, you can get some sauce. You put the sauce on at the end. And then I have a side of edamame here. Throw that in too, pop it out of the pods. So yeah, that's how you do it. And so yeah, that's the end of day 3. It was a very fun day, but for the most part, it was just relaxing, very short drives too. Day 4. I think I'm getting better at this like dramatic thing. So day 4 was not something that I was looking forward to. Obviously, the first part of the day sounded fun. We were going to go to the beach, we were going to go to Norfolk, but we had like a 6-hour drive back to Charlotte, and I did not want to do that. Anyway, let's start with the beach. We woke up and we went to Cape Charles, Virginia. The whole reason was that for pretty much all the planning of this trip, we were looking on the map and we were seeing that we were going all the way up to Virginia, and then we would loop back around through that like eastern part of Virginia. And I was trying to do the planning, and I was like, we're gonna go through the Panhandle or the Peninsula, and both of those things are not what it's called. And I was just like, what the heck is it called? So then I was like, why don't we just stop there and ask someone? So this is what it's called. We stopped right here in, where is it? Right there in Cape Charles, Virginia. And we found out. So we actually got the privilege of interviewing the mayor and the town manager of Cape Charles. So that was very cool. We are here with Rick Keuroglian and Adam Charney, the mayor and the town manager of Cape Charles, Virginia, to do our interview here. So the first question is, I've always been fascinated by this part of Virginia, but I haven't known what to call it. I've always called it the Virginia Panhandle or Virginia Peninsula, but in my research I saw that it's called the Eastern Shore of Virginia. To what degree do you believe in that or in any other names?
Definitely the Eastern Shore of Virginia, and then, separated out Cape Charles basically on its own.
Yeah, it's like its own town.
Mm-hmm.
I've literally never heard of that until last week when I was actually researching, and I was like shocked because I come here and I see like all these plates and they say Eastern Shore of Virginia. I've never seen it before, and it's the next state over, so it's like kind of shocking.
Yeah, and they take great pride in that here.
Yeah, well, I see that. There's like there's the Eastern Shore popcorn. I think that's right there. I saw that. The license plates, like I said, and there's big signs on the roads, and I didn't know about it at all. Obviously, we weren't just going to only ask the mayor and the town manager just about that. We talked to them a lot about, how like tourism affects them and everything like that, and being connected to Virginia or Maryland or anything like that, just because they're in such a weird spot where it's like you're just completely separate from Virginia, but you also are connected to them. It's just very interesting. So that was actually the last thing we did in Cape Charles. The first couple things we did is we went to the beach. It was one of the most fascinating beaches. As you can see in this clip, it's shallow for like 10-20 yards easily, where it's basically just up to your knees. And then it repeats like that, and it kind of makes sense because it's on the Chesapeake Bay. It's not in the Atlantic. The water in the beach was, of course, super beautiful, and all of the buildings in the town were also really beautiful. The major difference being that these buildings actually look like a beach town, and everything we have been driving through for the past day was just super rural, and the only buildings we saw were either tiny farm buildings or like farm mansions, but there was no towns whatsoever. We then looked around and tried to find some shops. We found a really neat sandwich shop, so that was cool. They had sandwiches on like croissant, so I got like a pimento cheese ham and croissant sandwich. That was amazing. And then we tried to find a store with postcards, and we did, and that's where I got this one from. And besides that, this whole trip, I decided that whenever I go to somewhere cool, I want to get a souvenir, but I don't just want to end up with like 100 shirts or like 100 just random little tokens. So I decided that the best thing for me to do is just to get postcards from every single location. We heading out. Bye Cape Charles. I actually genuinely love this place. So yeah. After that, we went down to Norfolk and we took the second Chesapeake Bay Bridge. So this one is the one that basically goes right next to the Atlantic. Okay, so there's a second bridge, second tunnel. We're on one bridge. Well, technically it's two bridges. But yeah, look at this. Crazy, and we're only like halfway through the bridge. So yeah. That bridge was very interesting. We thought we did like the whole bridge when we went through the tunnel, and then it turned out we were still just in the middle of the Atlantic. It was very cool to actually do. I wasn't really scared. I just wanted Matt to drive so I can, take a bunch of clips. And then when we got to Norfolk, the pretty much only thing we did is that we went to a parking garage. We went down from the parking garage and we walked to this park where we took clips of me for like a video that I'm thinking about doing. And then we went to this really cool like indoor mall type of place. It wasn't that big of a mall. It was more so just a bunch of shops that have an indoor area. We got ice cream there, and then we pretty much headed out. We started the drive back around 2 p.m. and we decided that for this drive we wanted to rotate. So I started the drive, and we got out of Norfolk, and then we went onto a state route. And I remember we turned onto the state route in Virginia, and it said 90 miles of that single state road. So I basically was like, you know what? I'm gonna sit here and I'm gonna drive this entire thing through. So I drove all 90 miles on that state route, no stops, no nothing. And then I was like, once we do that, I'll stop for gas and I'll switch off. So right before the end of it, before we merged into, I think, I-85, I stopped at a gas station, we got more gas, we got some snacks, and then Matt started driving. And then he basically drove all the way home from 85. I offered to, switch off when we got home, but he just continued. We stopped at a Bojangles on the way back for food. Once we got back into Charlotte, it really started thundering. And then we got back to his house, we unpacked, and we, of course, looked at the final mileage. Okay, we just got back. We're in Charlotte. We ended the trip. It's very fun, right? This is one of the first ones we've ever done. We're going to do it next year. We're going to do it double the length. That's the plan, at least.
Probably almost quadruple the time.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot. And speaking of the mile, we had, I don't remember the starting number, but now we are at 62,865 miles. So yeah, that was a very fun trip. I made a bunch of videos. A lot of these videos are going to continually be scheduled out. Again, I am in college right now, so over the summer, I just try to schedule out videos as far as I can in advance. But yeah, I'm gonna turn it to myself in post in the room editing this. But yeah, very fun trip. I'm glad to be back, but it was an amazing experience. So that was it for day 4 and for all of this trip. It was a very fun thing for us to do, and I'm very excited about next year. As for this video, it's very different from any other video I've done. I really like this style where I get to talk about a trip we did and interlake clips and montages of things that happened. And so yeah, thank you for watching. And if you're interested in more of these type of trip videos, I'm going to be going on another one of these trips next summer. But I might make a couple more of these videos for just normal vacations we have, but we'll see. And yeah, anyways, thank you for watching, and as always, I hope you have a great day.